Well, I'm delighted to say that joining me on the Godcast today is professional snooker player Joe Perry. Joe, it's great to get you on the Godcast. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you.
You've recently been involved in the World Championships snooker, perhaps not in the capacity that you would have preferred, but how was it in the commentary box?
Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's no pressure. It's nice to actually go there and enjoy the Crucible and the World Championship for what it actually is. Obviously, rather be participating and playing, but it's definitely a great consolation prize, and you get to see snooker from a very different angle in the commentary box.
Yeah. How much of a disappointment was it for you not to be there playing this year?
It's always disappointing. It's the last event of the season. It's the big finale. It's without doubt the best place to play snooker. So it's always disappointing when you don't qualify. But I've been around a long time now. I've played there lots of times. I've had some good times there and some not so good times. I know what it's like not to qualify. So I don't get as downbeat as I used to when I didn't qualify. Years ago when I was early on in my career.
What's the mindset, Joe, at the end of a long season? Do you like to do what the footballers do, get away on holiday and just down tools for a while? What's your kind of regime?
Yeah, I put my cue down, definitely. Although this year I've sort of started coaching, so I put my cue down in terms of like practicing long hours and preparing for snooker matches. But I've sort of kept this sort of coaching commitments I sort of signed up to, and I've been doing that a little bit. I don't practice. I do get away on holiday, get the golf clubs out, just try and just do everything, catch up with friends that you don't get time to see in the season and stuff like that. So yeah, just try and relax and enjoy myself really.
And on the other end of the spectrum, when you're preparing for a new season, Joe, do you have a set routine? I think a lot of people perhaps wonder how snooker players get into the zone. Just take us through that a bit, if you would.
Yeah, it's like I sort of had like a month, 6 weeks off. So, you can't go from not playing for that amount of time and then sort of straight away getting on and do 4 or 5 hours. It just doesn't work. Like, I'm going to be 48 in August, so my body doesn't allow me to do that. I can't, after like an hour and a half, my sort of back and neck will start aching a little bit if I haven't played for that amount of time. So just gradually build it up slowly, go from doing like an hour a day to sort of 2, 3, and then try and push up to sort of 4 as the season commences, and get some other players in or go and play them at their place just to get that match sharpness back. But it's just a steady build to try and sort of find some form ready for the season to start.
Yeah. And what would you say the key is to your longevity, Joe? Because a lot of guys have came out of the game and tried to go back in, thinking about Stephen Hendry particularly, but is it just that constant playing, or is it just the fact that you love playing snooker so much?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think, I'm about to commence my 30th year as a professional. So, they've not all been wonderful, happy times. There's been lots of times when I thought, do I still want to be doing this? Do I still have the heart to do this day in, day out? And you get lots of like dark times, but on the main, I've always loved snooker. I've always loved playing. I've always loved the challenge, the competition, and I think that, along with the continued dedication and the hard work, means that you can sort of stay involved for long periods. Plus, obviously, you need the skill, because there's lots of players out there that put in as much hard work as me that maybe don't just have that extra bit to sort of stay on the tour, and they sort of drop on and off. But it's a lifelong commitment to be a sports person.
Yeah. And did you always feel that you had a big tournament winning you, Joe? I mean, winning the Welsh Open this year must have been massive, I guess.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that day was still there. For many, many years, I've always believed that I was capable of winning any tournament I entered. If things sort of worked out for me, and the sort of things went my way that week, and I found some good form, I knew I was always capable of winning. But it's just so hard to win. There's the same people win all the time, and that's it sounds like winning. When I say winning's difficult, it sounds a bit weird because the same people win all the time, but that's because they are so good, and they've got that extra little bit of mentality, that maybe that belief, that inner confidence that just gets them over the line sometimes. And it's not easy to win. But yeah, I still had a sort of glimmer of hope that there was still another good week there for me.
Do you think it's the norm with snooker players that trophies are the kind of the be all and end all, Joe? I mean, I saw one of your interviews after you won the Welsh Open, and you said that it was never about the dollar, really. It was never about the prize money. It was about winning. Is that a general mentality with snooker players?
I think so. I think as you get older, obviously your priorities change. You know, you get a mortgage, you get children, you get a family, you have to pay bills and stuff like that. But on the whole, you know, when you get your cue out at whatever age you are, 10, 11, 12, you know, you don't think, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to play snooker and become really rich. You don't do it. You just play snooker and you absolutely love snooker, and the two go hand in hand. You know, if you do really well, you can make a nice living out of the game. But it's not. I don't think it's ever about the money when you first sort of fall in love with a sport, especially snooker, because it's not one of the most glamorous sports out there. It's not one of the most well paid. You know, the guys at the top do really well. I've had a good life, but you know, it's not like golf or tennis where you can be a millionaire within like 1 or 2 years. It's not like that. It's a long road, long hard road.
Yeah. And how old were you, Joe, when people started kind of making noises, or you actually thought yourself that you had the potential to be a professional?
Well, I sort of grew up in London, and you know, I was sort of one of the best juniors in the club I played at, but that didn't really count for much. I was like well down in terms of national junior rankings. It wasn't until my parents left London, we moved to Cambridgeshire, that snooker become a lot more serious for me. You know, my whole life changed. You know, from being able to jump on a bus or a tube to go to a snooker club to having to get, you know, my father to drive me to a club, and you know, them 3 hours were very precious then. So I made sure them 3 hours counted, and I put good practice in. And my sort of mum and dad, they built a snooker room out the back, so I could put even more time in. And it was when I got to about 15, 16. Started to win a few things, you know, big tournaments, amateur sort of junior stuff, that I thought, yeah, if I, you know, dedicate myself to this, then I've got a chance.
Who are your heroes as a kid watching the game?
Well, the first snooker match I ever remember watching on TV was the world final between Jimmy White and Steve Davis. And I loved the way Jimmy White played. And I think that's sort of the mentality I've had over the years with all sport, really. I sort of, you know, typical English, support the underdog. And like Jimmy White was my sort of snooker hero. You know, looking back, I probably should have picked Steve Davis because he was a winner. You know, my career may have gone differently. I've heard like John Higgins and Ronnie O'Sullivan say that their hero was Steve Davis growing up, and you know, they hadn't done too bad. So maybe I picked the wrong one, but yeah, no, it was Jimmy White growing up.
And then these guys go on to be your friends, I guess, being on the circuit and being an established snooker player. Was that a bit surreal at first?
Yeah, very much so. Even though they're the same age as me, they were so far ahead of me in terms of like their careers. You know, when I started qualifying for tournaments, like proper tournaments, and going backstage and to players' lounge and things like that, they'd already won. So, you know, they were sitting in there like in their own front room, really. And I walked in, and I was a bit like rabbit in the headlights. You know, I walked in, there was all these superstars in the room, and it took me a while to sort of feel that I was, you know, meant to be there, sort of allowed to be there in sort of like their backyard. And then as friendships build and they grow, yeah, I'd like to consider them. Got lots of very good friends on the snooker tour.
Yeah. Do you think Jimmy White is the best player never to have won the World Championship, Joe?
I think he was in the 90s. I don't think so now. I think in terms of just pure playing ability, I think probably Ding Junhui, the Chinese guy, is probably the best snooker player not to have won the world title. But Jimmy's up there. He's always going to be in that conversation. The fact that he lost in so many finals means that everyone's going to straight away just assume that Jimmy's the best never to have won it. But I think in the era we play now, and the era that Ding Junhui has played snooker, I think for me, he'd be the best player not to have won the world title.
Yeah, I just want to touch on snooker, how it's gone international in a minute, but just got kind of with your game, Joe, you're talking about, you know, Jimmy being your hero. Has your game changed much over all those years then? Would you, when you look back, you know, can you see clear changes in your approach to being a snooker player, or have you been consistent right through?
Yeah, I think I've sort of gone with the times, really. You know, when I was sort of like learning the game, it was a bit more pragmatic approach. It was a bit more percentage based snooker. You sort of learn from a very young age how to sort of play tactical stuff and safety. But the game's moved on. It's become far more aggressive, far more about making big breaks and scoring. So, you know, you adapt your game to suit the style you're playing, really. And I think I've sort of developed all areas of the game. So I could probably improve all areas, but I wouldn't actually specifically be able to tell you what the strongest part of my game is. You know, so I've sort of developed as the years have gone by, every sort of part of my game, and I'd like to think I've got a pretty good, solid, all-round game when it all sort of comes together.
Yeah. I've always had this kind of I can't even think of the word, hypothetical question in my head about whether players like Cliff Thorburn, Terry Griffiths, Eddie Charlton, do you think they would cope in the modern game, or do you think their game was such a pragmatic approach that it just wouldn't work now?
It's very difficult to compare eras. Their game as it was, then probably no, it wouldn't stand up in today's snooker. But you know, they were the best players of their generation. So you know, like myself, they would have, if the game was played differently then, I think they would have adapted to the surroundings and they would have been up there. You know, you don't get to be world champion like Cliff Thorburn and Terry Griffiths was if you're not good. You know, if you're not any good. So I think had the game been played that way then, I think they would have adapted their game and been comfortable in them surroundings. You know, Steve Davis, he said, none of us agree with what he says. He says, you know, he wouldn't make the top 50 today because of the standards so high and the breaks that people make. But I'm not having that at all. You know, Davis, he would have adapted and he would have been able to compete and he would have found a way to win because he's, you know, one of the best players snooker's ever seen. So, yeah, it's difficult. As they was then no, but I think they're that good. They would have found a way.
Yeah. And as I watched snooker as you did as a kid, it was very much a kind of a British Isles kind of sport, wasn't it? But now it really is a truly international event. I was looking just at some of the places you've played in recent years. You know, India, Bahrain. Obviously, it's huge in China. Has that been a good thing? I sometimes feel that some snooker players think, I can't be bothered going to China. But what's your take on it, Joe?
Well, I think it's important. And going back to one of your earlier questions, you know, why am I sort of still up there so long? And I think that's another one of the reasons. You know, I've really embraced the traveling side of snooker and sort of new territories and tried to find a way to enjoy going to these sort of far-flung places and sitting on airplanes for hours and hours. You know, it isn't fun, but you know, you've got to find a way to enjoy it. And I just feel like lucky and privileged that I've been able to sort of been to a lot of places in the world because of snooker. You know, I've gone to a lot of places I probably would never have gone to them had it not been for snooker. So yeah, I just feel lucky and privileged, and I think it's wonderful that snooker is continually trying to find new territories.
Do you go out your way to try and absorb some of the culture when you're in these places, or is it a case of hotel venue?
No, I tried to. I'm not. You know, I haven't been. Can't say I've been to every sort of hot spot in these places we go to because we don't actually get enough time. And if you do well in the competition, you know, you've got to weigh up what at the end of the day, it's your job. So, you know, do you sacrifice going to look at something that's quite significant, or do you have a couple of hours on the practice table? So it's sometimes a weighing up process, but there's been lots of times where I've been away and I've lost early in the tournament and I've sort of stayed on for 2 or 3 days, done all the stuff. You know, I've been to the Great Wall a couple of times. You know, lots of things. Just off the top of my head, that's just one example. But no, I like to. When you go that far, you do want to see a little bit of the country. You don't just want to see a couple of snooker tables in a hotel ballroom.
Yeah, and just tell people who watch or listen to this what it's actually like going to play in China, because they are huge fans out there, aren't they?
It's really strange, actually. It's hard to get your head around what it's like playing in China, because when we first started going, you get off the airplane and you're like a rock star, or I can imagine what it's like, what the footballers feel like. You know, there's people waiting, there's all placards up and pictures of yourself and cheering your name and all that sort of thing at the airport, waiting for you to come off the plane. And then at the hotels, the same. There's like 50 to 100 people every single morning, afternoon, evening in the lobby looking for pictures and signed autographs and things like that. But then when you get to the venue, it's pretty empty, and it's really weird that they just can't can't get the ticketing thing right. I think the tickets are so expensive for your everyday person in China. They're sort of priced out of going in, so it's like crazy in and around the venue. Yet when you get inside, it's quite quiet and pretty empty. So yeah, a bit of a surreal experience sometimes. But if you get to the latter stages in China, obviously it's a full packed audience. And if I've played Ding Junhui there a few times, and that is, that's a very memorable occasion.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Joe, I was just thinking about the game itself, and I love sport. I used to be a footy ref, but I like golf, as it appears you do as well. I'm not very good at snooker. I love it. I try, but I'm not very good. It just doesn't seem to come. What is the key to being half decent snooker player? Is a lot of it mental, would you say, or is it actually just practice?
I think the mental side of snooker just comes in as at the sort of level we're at. That's when it's really, really tough mentally. You've got to be able to accept, bad hits and good and bad luck and stuff like that, and things. It's a very tough mental sport because you sit in your chair. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't influence the game one way or another when you're in your chair. So it's quite tough at our level. I'm biased because I play snooker, but I honestly do think it's one of the hardest sports in the world to get good at. I really do, because there's so much going on. Technically, you've got to be good, and it's not just I find golf extremely difficult. But in golf, you literally you hit the ball where you want it to go. In snooker, there's so much more going on. You've got to, if you're potting, you've got to pot the ball. You've got to get on the next ball in such a way to get on the next ball. You've got to develop things as you go. No game is ever the same. You've also got to be on guard to keep your opponents safe and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's a really hard, really, really hard sport, and it just takes hours and hours and hours, and I think a little bit of natural talent to get any good at it.
Yeah. Are you somebody that's ventured down the sports psychology route? Do you use professional services to help with your frame of mind or well-being?
Yeah, I've tried. I've sort of dabbled in it. The most success I always found it quite difficult because, like I say, I think snooker's quite unique, and I do understand these people are very, very good at what they do, but I could never relate to some of the things they told me. It was as if like they didn't actually know what was going on in the snooker player's head. But the one time I did get a lot of success from it was when Terry Griffiths, former snooker champion, he went into the sort of coaching and the mental side of the game, and he done a lot of studies and a lot of work behind the scenes on how like the mind works mentally. And I could really relate to him, and I had some good success. Some of my best years when I was working with Terry as in my corner.
Are you a spiritual kind of guy, Joe? Do you think of you seem quite a calm man just talking to you this morning? Are you a man that gives much time to philosophy and religion and ethics?
Not really. No, I can't say I have. I'm not for. I'm not against. I've always been like you just described. Really, I've always been pretty sort of chilled, laid out character. I don't try not to get too excited. Try not to get too down about things, and just sort of keep things in perspective. Really.
Yeah. What has been the biggest challenge in your snooker career, Joe? Would you say? Would it be maybe going a long period without getting a win, or what's been the biggest hurdles for you to overcome?
Well, physically, I had a severe back problem quite a few years ago, which I had to deal with that mentally more than physically, really. But was it in my interest to carry on, and did I want to carry on playing in pain and that sort of thing? But that aside, I think the biggest challenge for me is it's not been the lack of winning, because I've always sort of won more than I've lost in terms of matches. Okay, the trophy cabinet is not full up like some of them, but it's been all right. I've got quite a lot to show for my snooker career. It's just been just to keep questioning the the heart and the desire, the dedication to keep doing the hours and hours. And as I've got older, it's become more and more difficult to apply myself, how I know that I have to be able to compete at this level.
Yeah, and how the win in Wales, how much of a tonic is that being for you to actually go on and try and win more events?
Yes, it's nice because there is no better feeling than winning. There's, it's like you can get addicted to it. You'd like to. It'd be a great addiction to have. Keep lifting them trophies and having that all them sort of confetti things coming down you at the end of every week. But it doesn't happen very often. But yeah, it's just nice to just get a reminder that you're still capable, and if you do put the hours in and things do go well for you, that there's some great times ahead. You just got to keep believing and keep working. Yeah,
Leo Scullion, the ref, came on the Godcast, and he talked about the snooker community. I wondered how the snooker community reacted to that win in Wales. I bet that must have been quite affirming for you, was it?
Oh yeah, it was incredible. I've always, no one likes to sort of sit here and say, yeah, I've always been like quite popular on the tour, but like I say, I don't sort of, I'm not opinionated enough and outspoken enough to sort of upset anybody. So I'd like to think that I sort of like get on with pretty much everyone on the tour. I think I've always been like there for the younger ones coming through. I'm always there to talk to and pass on advice or answer questions if they've got anything to say. And after that week, you sort of do get a sense of that appreciation. You don't realise it week in, week out, but when you win, the amount of people that come up to you and say like really nice things, you just think people just say it for the sake of saying it, but they didn't. They sort of went out of their way, and it wasn't just a well done and a handshake. It was a lot more than that. Some of my good friends said some really nice things that really meant a lot and will stick with me. So yeah, it was nice on that part, definitely.
Fabulous. And I want to ask you about, I don't know the answer to this. 147s, Joe. How many have you had?
Well, that's one little thing I need to sort of strike off my bucket list. Really, I've never had one in a professional tournament. I've made lots and lots in practice. I don't keep count because as nice as they are, they don't actually mean nothing in practice. But no, that's something I'd really still like to achieve in professional snooker and make one in the competition.
Yeah. Just when you are break building, when you're kind of working your way, how far ahead are you actually looking? I always wonder that when I'm watching the game. It's kind of, me who plays occasionally, I'm just looking to put the ball in front of me. But you guys, you're looking way down the line, are you?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's normally 2 shots ahead. You're looking to pot the ball you're on and get on the next ball in such a way as to get on the next ball. But sometimes it's a bit more difficult than that. If the black is only available into one corner pocket, you might be like 4 or 5 shots ahead trying to plan a way to get on the red that's blocking the black into one corner pocket. But I'd say a general rule would be 2 shots. But on the odd occasion, when you sort of like there's a bit of a puzzle to be worked out, you might be like 4 or 5. But yeah, general rule is about 2 shots.
Yeah. And what's your view on the game in general, Joe? You think it to me from the outside looking in, it feels like in recent years there's been a resurgence and its popularity has come back, as not that it ever really went away, but do you think the game's in good shape at the minute?
I think the professional game is in great shape. I think there's a lot more they could do, but again, it's a balancing act. I've been involved in sort of players' commissions and things like that, trying to fight for players like lower down the rankings that do have a tough time. It all looks very good at the top. Players, I think there's a few years running now, the guy who's finished top has earned over £1 million, which is wonderful for snooker. But don't have to go down the rankings too far for it to be a bit of a struggle. So I think if I could change everything in snooker now, it'd be to just sort of level out the prize money a little bit. I think 150,000 is more than enough for a first prize. I don't think we need to go any higher than that. So rather than stick another 50,000 on the first prize, I'd like to see them maybe pick up the bottom. So instead of getting like 4,000 or 5,000 for last 32s, I'd like to see that go up to sort of 7 or 8, and that would really help the lower ranked pros to sort of sustain and continue to try and make their way in snooker.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. So if you're kind of outside the 64 and you're going through qualifying events and things, is there any financial support from the snooker from the governing body, or is it kind of you got to pay your own fees, you got to sort your own hotel out? Is there any support in that aspect?
No, it's all off your own back, and that's why it's really tough. If you qualify for an overseas event, then a lot of the fees are taken care of, and also if you qualify for an overseas event, you're normally already on like a guaranteed amount of prize money, so your expenses are covered in the roundabout sort of way. But yeah, there's 128 players on the tour, and they only ever pay 64 players, so half the field in every event get nothing. So I get where like the boss is coming from, saying you don't want to reward people for losing, but I think if you do enough to become a professional snooker player, I don't see that as losing. I think there should be some kind of just some sort of something. You're not going to get rich on sort of £10,000 a year for losing all your first round matches, but it would at least soften the blow and give you that encouragement to carry on, keep trying.
I guess there's quite a few decent players who give up because they just can't afford to do it.
Yeah, and it's especially as you get older, you can maybe do it with sort of bank of mum and dad and a few sponsors and things helping you when you're younger, just like I did. You need that help when you're younger, but as you get older and you have to start fending for yourself, it's the world's not getting any less expensive. It's getting quite expensive to live, and everything's going up. So snooker's not really, it's moving with the sort of the times in terms of the top end, but down below it's hasn't really changed much in the last sort of 5-10 years.
No, I was wondering, you said you like your golf. I was just wondering what you thought about the recent kind of Saudi investment in LIV snooker, and whether that might be a threat to other sports. Do you think there's enough loyalty to the snooker governing body as it is, or do you think money would talk? If something came along that was attractive.
I'm not sure. You might get one or two that have maybe coming to the end of their careers, might think, well, I've had enough, sort of, like I say, it's a tough old year, hours and hours of practice every day. If they could sort of go on some kind of exhibition circuit, which I see the golf's just been labelled, a few might think, well, my time's done here. I might just go and just get some pennies over there and call it a day. But I'm not so sure. I don't think snooker's the sort of people I talk to involved in snooker for many years. Like we said earlier on, I don't think money is the driving factor. I think I've heard lots of people have conversations where they'd rather win the one of the more significant, memorable tournaments on the calendar, which carries less prize money than they would some of the big events in China because of the prestige involved and stuff like that. So no, I'd like to sit here and think that there's not much chance of a breakaway tour going in snooker.
Oh, well, that's good to hear, Joe. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I love snooker. I'm grateful for your time. What's your schedule looking like? When's your next when do you get competitive again?
Well, the first tournament of the season we always play is it's called a Championship League. It's played over many weeks, many groups, sort of gradually filtered down to one final group. Groups of 4 gradually filtered down to one winners group of 4 after so many weeks. That all gets underway at the end of June, the first group. I'm not due to start competing until I think July the 7th is when I first hit a competitive ball in the new season. So I'm just sort of practicing, getting ready for that. And then we've got a few sort of early qualifiers for some overseas events later on in the year. So yeah, try and get sharp for them. And then it all sort of really gets going sort of end of August, September time, when it all starts to kick in and we get really busy.
And any more punditry stuff to look forward to?
Well, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. It's been going well for me. I seem to get decent feedback, and the BBC seem quite happy with what's been going on at the World Championship and stuff. And unfortunately for I think everyone, but maybe fortunately for me, it's been announced that it's the last year for Dennis Taylor and John Virgo. I'll be sad to see him go. I've learned a lot, and I've really enjoyed my time in the commentary box with them. But apparently, it's coming to an end for them. So maybe that opens up the door possibly for me, which I'll gratefully take. But again, like I said, it'd be sad to see them go. They are synonymous with snooker.
They are indeed, yeah, legendary. I think Dennis Taylor lived around here, lived at Blackburn. I don't know if he's still up here, but
yeah, I think he is actually. Yeah, I think he's still there.
He plays the golf circuit around here quite
He
frequently.
does, yes,
Yeah.
yes, king golfer.
Right, Joe.
Still
Well,
very good as well, apparently.
yeah. I love the old snooker players. Alex Higgins and people like that. We just they were entertainers as well as pros, weren't they? Real personalities.
Definitely.
Yeah. Joe, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Congratulations on the win earlier this year. I'm sure it's still kind of filling you with much joy, and congratulations on the punditry, and all the best for the coming season. And thanks for coming on the Godcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, nice to speak to you. Thank you a lot. Bye-bye.